quickly finishing the 26th chapter of A Little History of the World. We just heard how the Swiss defeated Charles the Bold, and we continue. This is why the German emperor who was ruling around 1500 is known as the Last Knight. His name was Maximilian, and he was a member of the Habsburg family, whose might and wealth had grown steadily since the time of King Rudolph. Since 1438 their power had spread beyond their own country of Austria, and such was their influence that all the German emperors who had been elected since then had been Habsburgs. Nevertheless, the German noblemen and princes gave most of them a good deal of trouble, and Maximilian the Last Knight was no exception. They exercised almost unlimited power over their fiefdoms and had become increasingly reluctant to accompany their emperor into battle when he commanded them to do so. With the arrival of money and cities and gunpowder, the granting of land with bonded peasants in return for military service had become as outdated as chivalry, which is why, when Maximilian went to fight the French king for his Italian possessions, he took paid soldiers instead of his vassals. Soldiers like these were called mercenaries. They were rough, rapacious brutes who strutted about in outlandish costumes and thought of little but plunder, and since they fought for money rather than for their country, they went to the person who paid them most. This cost the emperor a great deal of money that he didn't have, so he was forced to borrow from rich merchants in the towns. And this, in its turn, meant that he had kept on good terms with the towns, which upset the knights, who felt increasingly unwanted and unneeded. Such problems gave Maximilian a headache. Like the knights of old, he would far rather have ridden in tournaments and composed fine verses about his adventures to present to his beloved. He was a strange mixture of the old and the new, for he was very taken with a new art, and was always talking about the great German painter, Albrecht Dürer, who had learnt a lot from the Italians, but had taught himself even more to make paintings and engravings in his honor. Through these wonderful portrait paintings by the first of the new German artists, we can actually see what the Last Knight looked like. These works, together with the paintings and buildings of the great Italian artists, are in fact the heralds who cried, "Attention, please, a new age has begun." And if we called the Middle Ages a starry night, we should look upon this new wide-awake time which began in Florence as a bright, new dawn. And that's the end of the 26th chapter. Remember, you can now watch these videos in a playlist with the name A Little History of the World. I encourage you to do that. There's also a playlist for The Dark is Rising and The Once and Future King, Sword in the Stone, as well as Parzival, The Quest of the Grail Knight. More playlists will be coming soon.